The Rules Committee will come to order. We welcome everyone. We're here for consideration of the Airport and Airway Extension Act of 2011, Part, not 2, 3, 4, Part 4, is what it says here. So we're very happy to welcome the Republican leadership of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, Chairman Mica and Chairman Petri. Gentlemen, thanks very much for being here. Congratulations on getting us to this point. And let me say that without objection, any prepared statement that either of you have will appear in the record in its entirety, and we'd welcome your summary. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this is very frustrating, but we've got to get this done. My colleagues, we've got to extend the FAA reauthorization and highway, both, but today we're going to consider FAA. Highway's not quite as bad. I think we're on our 8th extension. We're on 20 extensions of FAA. I authored the last bill as the chairman, had the position Mr. Petri has of aviation. In 2003, a 4-year extension. Now, no offense to the other side of the aisle, they had huge majorities in the House and Senate, and for 4 years we did not pass an extension. What number extension is this that we've done? Two for our side? This will be the third one?
Third for us.
Third for, okay, fourth.
That's why it says Part 4 on here.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't want to...
Part 4.
I don't want to come back again. And I've really tried to be a good steward of this responsibility, Mr. Petri and I and others working together. The staffs have done an incredible job. This has been a bipartisan effort. The bill is basically resolved. There are a couple of pending issues, all concurrent on the Senate action. Now, some of you know there was a tough labor vote in the House, and that was on the NMB provisions. The House passed it. The Senate did not pass it. You could spend a lot of time debating that provision, but the process has always been that we seek some compromise. Now, I know we're not going to have the House position probably prevail, and we don't intend to have the Senate position to prevail. But from our side of the aisle, we believe that it wasn't an unfair imposition by the NMB board to have a vote. And we had this issue up here, remember, when we were considering the FAA amendments, a less than majority, full majority of the workers vote who have to be put in a union, and then leave the exit. It's a one-way bill to a majority of actual workers to get out of the union. We offered a compromise to at least make it equitable. That was rejected, and then we asked for some simple considerations, maybe judicial review like the National Labor Relations Board has under some of its procedures to which labor is already subject. But the answers come back no. In fact, Mr. Reid has refused to negotiate on the issue. We did a clean extension last time, and I thank you for doing that. This is a clean extension this time with a slight variation. We took some language that the Senate unanimously agreed to dealing with essential air service, and that's part of this extension. In addition, there is one slight variation. We do have a limitation on the amount of subsidization, and I think that's at $1,000. Currently, you have some EAS communities, in fact, one that receives an EAS subsidy of $3,700 per passenger that would be affected by this extra provision of the extension. So I want to get this done. We should have it done by this week. I need some pressure from the House, work with our leadership, and talk to members on both sides of the aisle. We want this done, completed, and this extension takes us to the 16th. We can do that, but this extension also forces the Senate's hand to act, and we want to get this over. So that's, again, my request is to pass this. We do need the rule and get this before the floor tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Chairman Petrod.
Thank you. I'll put my full statement in the record, and basically I support Chairman Mica, and this is a clean exception with one extension with one exception, which would not save a whole lot of money, but it's a lot of money in the real world. It's $8.5 million of really subsidized air travel, and the extension tries to clean up the Essential Air Service program by saying that you have to be at least 90 miles from another airport before you get a subsidized flight. Currently, there are some that are subsidized at something when there's 62 miles from O'Hare, from Dulles, that people can drive quicker to Dulles than to fly, but we're subsidizing that at over $10 a mile for each person who does it. And then we limit the amount of subsidy to $1,000 per flight. So it's modest reform in the Essential Air Service program. We're going to be tackling as a Congress over the next few months and years many much bigger reforms. So we thought we would make a small effort in our own committee area that we have knowledge about, staff's worked on, and it was included, half of this reform, in the Senate bill. So hopefully they will agree to this, these modest improvements. We thought rather than just doing nothing, we should be trying to at least move the ball forward a little bit in this extension, and that's why we would ask that you approve the extension with this modification.
Well, thanks very much to both of you. Appreciate your hard work, and sorry we have to keep doing this over and over and over again, but the notion of bringing about reform, a first $8.5 million step, is a positive move, and we all, I think everyone here spends a lot of time at airports. We travel, we all travel an awful lot, and we have constituents, our fellow Americans. Safety is priority number one, as you all have underscored time and time again, and we look forward, though, to the kind of reform that you all have championed and been working on. So I have no questions. I look forward to our moving this as expeditiously as possible so that you can proceed and get back to work on the very important reforms that you want. So thank you all very much. Mr. Sessions.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Hearty welcome to both of you for being with us today. In my meeting notes that I have, I note that in talking about Essential Air Service EAS reform that you have done, that our our colleagues from the Senate, Senator Rockefeller has stated in response to the EAS provisions, the Senate will not consider passing an FAA extension with policy riders that hurt small communities across the country. What does that mean?
I can tell you something. We had an essential airport service in the district I represent, and we eliminated it. And the local newspapers editorialized against it because when you sat down and looked what was really going on, it wasn't essential. And we're talking about 90 miles. You can drive 90 miles or find other ways of going. You don't need to have government subsidized. There are subsidized flights. There are areas where you get up to Alaska, some other areas out west where their distances are long and the economics don't quite work. It is an essential link. But this program has grown and it needs to be cleaned up, and so we're making a modest step by in this extension, agreeing to reforms suggested and passed unanimously by the Senate to limit it to at least 90 miles, and then we're also trying to limit the subsidy to $1,000 per passenger per flight.
$1,000 subsidy per person.
We're only
per flight.
in the extension. We're only
Yes, the government would pay. We'd pay $1,000 for the ticket max, and then the person, if it costs more than that, would have to pay something in addition to that.
Sounds like Amtrak.
Yeah, no, it's a little worse in some cases.
Yeah, unfortunately, the one that's $3,700 per passenger is in Nevada. So that it does affect certain members of Congress more than others. But we have service, this affects 13 airports. Again, the distance requirement, 13 of the, almost all of the airports have access by other airports. The drive is, again, limited by miles, but that was the provision that the Senate put in and agreed to. Remember the House voted for, maybe not all the Ds, but we had some support over there. But the House voted to do away with the essential air service. So this is
Except for Alaska.
except for Alaska and Hawaii. But this is just a small tweaking measure, hopefully to get some attention. And I appreciate the bipartisan support to move this forward, send the Senate a message that we want this finally resolved and move forward.
Well, the gentleman yield for just a moment.
I would yield to the
Thank you. I want to make sure I heard it correct. Did you say the Senate version did what again? It got rid of the $1,000 subsidy?
Passed a
Sorry, I just didn't hear it.
provision that limited the miles, 90 miles of a medium airport, and passed that unanimously. So we've included a Senate provision. The only different provision is that we added, we will not subsidize more than $1,000 per passenger. That happens to affect just one airport. Is that? Oh, I'm sorry, 3. So it's and 1 is in Nevada. I'm sorry. I apologize. Correct the record to it affects 3. Do you know the other states? They might be interested. Montana. Nevada, Montana. It's an equal opportunity imposition because I think that we have some folks from Montana on both sides of the aisle affected. And Nevada. And New Mexico.
Chairman Petrie, I appreciate your words also of the impact on you in a airport near your hometown, and I think that this is the kind of insistence that I believe that our authorizers do need to have, where they go in and recognize we cannot pay for this, should not pay for it, and the American people need to recognize that we should not ask the federal government to be doing these kinds of things, and I applaud both of you for including it, for being here today. I yield back my time.
Ms. Slaughter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This expires on Friday,
Yes.
and what happens if we don't get Senate action? What's our fallback position? What are the consequences of it expiring?
My understanding is that the FAA air traffic controllers are deemed as essential and would continue to operate.
They would continue to work.
In the case of a failure to reauthorize, that the routine office staff and others would be furloughed.
Okay. All right, now, have any conferees been appointed? I know that.
No, but we've had an
Ranking
excellent
member.
working relationship in staff working. I can tell you that Senator Rockefeller has been great to work with. Our Democrat counterparts in the House, Mr. Costello couldn't be better, Mr. Rahal. 99% of the issues are resolved. But I just don't want this to go on any longer. We're going to take this measure, whatever measure we have to bring this to a conclusion. And good people in good faith should be able to conclude it. And I'd hope you give us the leverage to get this done.
It has gone on way too long. There's no question about that. For most of us who have to depend on air service to try to get back and forth, it's pretty nightmarish life out there any way you look at it, particularly if you have to fly U.S. Air. I can tell you that we have a little phrase up there that says, time to spare, take U.S. Air. So I hope for the best. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank these two gentlemen also for their hard work. I know particularly Chairman Mica has been committed to getting the money to go as far as it can possibly go in all these areas of transportation. He's been thinking outside the box and looking for all kinds of ways to make things better in the area of transportation. I'm very grateful for you for calling attention to saving $8.5 million, although our notes say $12.5 million. But I think about Everett Dirkson's comments, $1 million here, $1 million there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money. I think the American people think that we've lost sight of the opportunity to save even small amounts of money. And I'm particularly grateful when Republicans pay attention to $8 or $12 million or $1 million, because the only way we're going to get this debt and deficit under control is to be looking for every place that we can save pennies, and pennies add up. So I'm very, very grateful to you for what you're doing, and I appreciate it, and I'm happy to support your request.
Mr. McGovern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at a letter that Mr. Costello, Mr. Rahal sent today to Speaker Boehner. Let me just read you the first 3 paragraphs. On April 7, 2011, the Senate requested a conference with the House on H.R. 658, the FAA Reauthorization Reform Act of 2011, and appointed conferees. Nevertheless, over the past 100 days, the House has taken no action to agree to a conference with the Senate to resolve the differences between the House and Senate-passed Federal Aviation Administration reauthorization bills. In fact, more than 6 weeks ago, the House and Senate committee staffs reached an impasse over a handful of controversial provisions in the House-passed FAA reauthorization bill. Yet, there has not been one meeting of the senior Republican and Democratic members of the House and Senate committees to resolve the remaining differences between the House and Senate bills. As a result, the FAA has continued to operate under a series of short-term extension acts that are slowing airport construction projects and costing taxpayers millions of dollars and the nation tens of thousands of family wage jobs. On behalf of the Democratic members of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, we write to urge you to agree to a conference with the Senate on H.R. 658, appoint conferees, and let the conference committee work its will in an open and transparent process on controversial issues included in the House-passed Republican bill. And I guess I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to insert this. I'm just curious your reaction to. This is
first,
sent July 19th, signed by Nick J. Ray Hall II and Jerry F. Costello.
Of course, I guess your side had 17 extensions, did not appoint conferees.
So that's the reason why you're not?
No, that's not the reason I have not, is we have tried to pre-conference this and get the issues resolved, and I can tell you that 99% of them are resolved in a bipartisan. Last time I checked, and we've had good consultation with all of the members. There are very few issues outstanding. And Mr. Oberstein and I and Mr. Costello and others, Mr. Petri, last time we worked very closely to both sides. We are, and I've talked to the Speaker, he is prepared to appoint conferees immediately. We can resolve this at a 1-hour conference, period. The time to stop messing around is now, and if we have to pass this, let's pass it and get going. If we have to pass some other measures from the House to make the Senate move, we're going to do it. So, but again, our leadership is committed fully to appointing those conferees.
And why haven't they then?
Well, again, we can have all the conferences we want till we have this pre-conference agreement on a major pending issue, which again has to. And if Mr. Reed wants to come to the conference, we'd invite him.
Well,
but everyone knows exactly what is pending. When we get a result from him, and actually has been taken outside the committee jurisdiction, this is a leadership on the Senate side decision. When we get some action there or some word in a positive direction, that issue will be resolved. We can go to conference and finish this.
But part of the purpose of a conference is to resolve issues.
There's only one issue.
To resolve that issue.
Clear?
But
and it's up to Mr.
Well, excuse me, let me ask a question, and you could respond if you don't mind. I guess the issue that is raised here, that I mean, if you're not resolving this on a staff level, I mean, is it a time to move it up? According to this, there's not been one meeting of the senior Republican and Democratic members of the House and Senate committees to resolve the remaining differences between the House and Senate bills. And I guess if, we want to move this thing at some point, you're going to have to meet with your counterparts in the Senate. And this is the letter that, Mr. Rahal and Mr. Costello have sent, dated today, to Speaker Boehner. And I guess my suggestion would be that, it's time to step it up if you want to resolve this. And that's one of the reasons why you have a conference.
Well, thank you, and we're prepared to step it up. The Speaker's prepared to appoint conferees. We're prepared to conclude this within a very limited time frame. All the issues have been resolved except the pending one, which I stated previously before the Rules Committee, and that continues to be the case, and it has been a bipartisan discussion.
I hope the Speaker will.
And bicameral.
Right. Well, I hope the Speaker, in a bipartisan spirit, will respond to the letter that Mr. Rahal and Mr. Costello have sent him and appoint conferees sooner than later. Thank
When
you.
I see him on the floor, I'll ask him.
Gentlemen, you'd like to say that I think that there is clearly a bipartisan consensus that we need to move forward. So, thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Hastings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thank you very much. If you like my necktie, you'll really like my socks. But
I never said I liked it. I said quite a nice.
look, either way you cut it. But first, I thank both of you gentlemen. And when I was looking at the communities less than 90 minutes from medium and large hubs, one jumps out at me that I'm sure must have been of interest, and that is Athens, Georgia. And the reason that I bring it up is because that's the home of the University of Georgia. And it would seem to me, or I don't know whether what the caps were for what was essential air service, but I'm just curious as to your reaction. As a matter of fact, there are 2 and possibly 3 other places where college sites exist. And I know, Chairman Micah, you have had the experience of trying to get in and out of Gainesville. I know that my colleague, Mr. Webster and Mr. Nugent, have had, as have you, the awesome experiences of trying to get from Tallahassee to Tallahassee from anywhere. Now, Tallahassee isn't in that category, but again, we've seen a diminution of service and going into a state capital, which I've never really understood. State legislators would let it happen. And with the thunderstorms and things that we have in Florida, I just have never understood it. So was there a way, or is there a way with the Senate to accept that 90-mile provision? It would just seem to me that we have more college kids on the road, and we could take them off, and I wouldn't mind that subsidy. What's the reaction to that, just as it pertains to Athens?
Well, Athens, 72 miles it's 72 miles to Atlanta. The Senate passed this provision, 90 miles. The problem is the cost of the subsidization and the availability of a cost-effective alternative. We do subsidize almost all forms of transportation.
That was the point that I was going to make.
I threw in the $3,700 example, and over a $1,000 limit, which affects 3 states, I guess 3 airports. The Senate passed this. We're only incorporating what the Senate passed unanimously and passing this back as a clean extension.
Well, if you did go to conference, could that be an issue that could be resolved?
The essential air service has been discussed in a bipartisan, bicameral, and I think we have a very good solution that both the House and Senate will find acceptable. There's only one issue now pending, everything else.
Is that funding?
Funding, there are differences in the House and Senate, and in our discussions, I think we can reach a level that's acceptable to both sides.
Well, on the House side, do you feel?
And that will be part of the conference, which I think we can conclude in an hour with members, and the Speaker will appoint them, and we can have this over with. But I have to have There's one remaining issue. It's in the hands of the Senate Majority Leader, and I'm being frank with you. I don't know how many people will come here and be frank. I happen to be John, but I'm John being frank. Okay.
Well, I hear you. I am, though, of a mind to believe that the House's numbers, which are different than the Senate
It was lower, but we're willing to even work with our senators on a whole host of issues. Again, I come pleading, asking you to help on this, with the House position to move forward with this, and we can resolve those differences, and I think you'll have very strong bipartisan support.
Since this matter did not go through regular order,
But
this provision that's before us, that did not go through regular order, understanding that most of us understand that this is the 4th time, we also know about the 17 times, some of us, and you must get awfully tired of bringing them to us. But since it didn't go through regular order, would you agree that members should be allowed to have an opportunity to amend the process?
Well, I'll leave that to the discretion of this panel, but again, I think you can get into Donnybrook. And you all did an excellent job of opening to a fair, open discussion. What do you have, 33 amendments, and you took 23. There were a couple that were duplicative. I don't think that there's ever been the discussion, the debate. In the committee, I had more votes on this on the FAA bill than we had in the entire last, 6 years? In the committee for 6 years, there were more votes on this. There's never been a more open, more transparent, more inclusive, more participatory process than what we have gone through on this measure.
Any way you cut it, it has not gone through regular order. And let me add to you, the reason that I disagree with the numbers in the House has to do with degrading safety. And I think you've heard me argue it along with you on Next Gen and all of the other issues. We have a substantial number, but I agree with you. There's no need for us to get into a Donnybrook about it, but we need to get real. What's going to happen is this is going to pass, and if you all don't have conferees at some point, Senator Rockefeller has made it very clear that he isn't going to move it, and so we'll be right back where we started from.
I thank the gentleman, and I also share his concern, and every one of us should share the concern for safety. And we have health safety programs harmless in our legislation, and that is absolutely, it's more essential than essential air service, essential safe air service, and we can't depart from that. Thank you.
This whole essential air program here, I mean, what's the justification for using taxpayer money to pay for empty seats into these places where commercial air service is not economically viable? I mean, why would we even want to tell taxpayers to do that?
It's called CONGRESS, and when you get 200 votes in the House and 60 in the Senate, this is what they do. Now, this started out as a much smaller program to give essential air service to some areas of the country that have no other means of transportation. It expanded to, $200 million, $250 million, and we've got subsidization of $3,700 a seat on one of these that I put in here. Now, the House did vote to sunset all of the essential air service programs with the exception of Hawaii and Alaska. But
do they get the money even if the seats are empty, or only if somebody buys a ticket?
That's a good question. I think they get the money if you buy a ticket.
The subsidy level is based on the passenger level?
It's based on the passenger level.
And so if somebody pays like $200 for a ticket, there could be an $800 of taxpayer money subsidy on top of that, effectively?
Yeah.
And if we want to zero that out, we would do that in the appropriation transportation bill. I mean, this is the authorization, but then we would do.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Well,
Another shot at it.
I'll look forward to working with the gentleman to try to do that. I would also like to say for the record as well that air travel is not very carbon efficient as well, and the emissions from jets for similar mileage compared to trains or automobiles is in terms of looking at our energy future, it's not the most efficient way to move people around. And I can't see any reason why the people in my district should be asked to pay for people's flights to places where commercial air travel is not economically viable. So I'll look forward to working with people.
Just a moment.
I'll yield to the gentleman from
I
Florida.
have firm disagreement with you in this regard. As you heard the chairman say, there is a subsidy for all of us. You ride from here to Colorado, and if you looked at the actual subsidy, then I guess you would say that we shouldn't do that. We wind up doing it.
What is the subsidy for the big airports?
But all forms of transportation get some kind of subsidy.
Is there a subsidy for I guess, the major airports under this bill?
No. They're user fees, so your ticket is paying for the air traffic controllers and all the rest of it.
No, and to be clear, I would support that. I mean, if we're paying for the air traffic controllers and the infrastructure, I guess it's a question of whether there's some public need to have commercial flights in small airports that don't serve a lot of people. And I could understand how Congress is a broadly representative body. Some members might have that, the only service in their district is there because it's subsidized. I would hope that the majority of us would have commercial service regardless. I'll be happy to yield to the gentleman.
You see, it's a question of whose ox is being gored. Now, I don't have a problem. I have all sorts of ways to get home. I can go to West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, Miami. I got planes going all the time. But if you live in somewhere and you need that service, that's an entirely different proposition. And I don't know when Americans got around to it's all about me. It's all about all of us.
I would just end by saying people should consider the various ways of getting in and out of any place that they choose to live and factor that into their decision of where to live. And that doesn't mean some people won't want to live in remote places. That's certainly fine. But they should live with those consequences rather than ask the rest of us to get them in and out of where they live. And I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank our members for enlightening us on the exigencies of congressional travel. Mr. Nugent, Mr. Scott, Mr. Webster. Let me just, before we finish, gentlemen, sitting right over your shoulder is our distinguished Pennsylvania colleague, Mr. Thompson, who has an amendment and says the underlying bill includes language to codify that communities within a 90-mile radius of a mid or larger sized hub airport will not be eligible for participation in the EAS program. The amendment that he's offering would ensure that 90 miles is calculated from physical address of the EAS airport to the mid or larger sized hub. And it's my understanding that you're addressing this issue with Senate language there, and I just wanted to see if either of you have any comments on Mr. Thompson's proposal.
Well, I took the Senate language, I don't know if you can do, if that differs from it, but I would prefer that since the Senate passed this, Mr. Hastings expressed concern about have this going through regular order. I would like to keep the Senate language.
Good. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for being here. Now, as I said, we're going to hear from our Pennsylvania colleague, Mr. Thompson. Please come forward, GT, and unless there's objection, any prepared statement that you have will appear in the record. And I should, as we prepare to introduce you, Mr. Petri is shaking hands with our distinguished new chaplain, and he's been here before, and I've encouraged him to come. Not that the Rules Committee needs prayers any more so than any other committee here in the House, but having the chaplain here is a privilege for all of us, and I want to encourage every member of this committee to get to know Pat Conroy, our great new chaplain. And I'm not looking directly at you, GT, as I say that, as if it's necessary, but I'm sure you would welcome the opportunity.
Well, Chairman, when it comes to airline safety, I would fly with Father Pat at any time.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Please proceed.
Well, first of all, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to add one of my colleagues who have asked to be a co-sponsor, Congressman Kretz.
Sure. Well, without objection, it will be noted in the record.
Okay, I appreciate it. The amendment that I have offered really is to provide, I think, certainty of congressional intent on what the two gentlemen were just talking about. The fact is that the committee has not taken all of the Senate. They've changed the Senate language, so I don't think that that's really an issue. In terms of the caps, we're not a part of the Senate language. My amendment really has to do with the FAA extension includes language to codify that communities within a 90-mile radius of mid or large-sized hub airport are not eligible for participation in the Essential Air Service Program, and I fully understand the committee's rationale behind those actions. However, while current mileage determination has been left to the Secretary of Transportation's discretion, no certainty in terms of how that is measured. My amendment strengthens the committee language by ensuring that the mileage is actually calculated from airport to airport. It's a simple amendment which changes one line in the proposed bill, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to testify and ask you to look favorably upon my common sense amendment.
Thanks for that. Let me just say that as this process proceeds, I mean, we've had discussion about conference and all. I hope very much that your concerns are brought into the mix and that you'll continue to work with Messrs. Micah and Petri as they work on this, as I'm sure you will, because I know this is a priority for you, but I have no questions. Mr. Sessions.
I have no questions, and I thank the gentleman for being here.
Thank you.
Mr. Governor. Ms. Fox?
No.
Mr. Hastings?
It is, but it would not, by all estimates, would still be under the 90-mile threshold like that. Oil City, Franklin, yeah.
Mr. Bishop? Mr. Polis? Mr. Woodall? Mr. Nugent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh.
Is there any indication, Mr. Thompson, about how many airports this change would affect, thinking about the chairman's desire to keep the Senate language as the Senate language is? What is the material impact?
This was actually, I have 2 airports on the list. This would impact one. This Bradford Regional. I don't know about others. I can tell you that this is a no-cost amendment because, frankly, what we're talking about doesn't impact the amount of money that is spent. I would also offer that it's not just the fees that are paid by $50 million of the funding from Essential Air Service is paid by overflights, planes that are flying over this country. So there are other funding streams for EAS in addition to what the gentlemen were talking about.
I thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Nugent? Scott? Mr. Webster? Thank you very much for being here, Mr. Thompson. We certainly appreciate that. That will conclude the hearing portion for consideration of H.R. 2553, and we will now be in receipt of a motion from the gentleman from the Big D.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant a closed rule for consideration of H.R. 2553, the Airport and Airway Extension Act of 2011, Part 4. The rule provides 1 hour debate on the bill, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member on the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that the bill shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions of the bill. Finally, the rule provides 1 motion to recommit.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman from Dallas. Any discussion or amendment? If do you have an amendment? Looks like you do. Then didn't hear if you were seeking recognition. Ms. Slaughter.
Yes, I move the committee report an open rule for consideration of H.R. 2553, so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to this bill.
You've heard the motion of the gentlewoman. Let me just say again, obviously, we are looking at the leadership of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee's effort to work through this, and we look forward to a conference, and we look forward to what I hope will be a speedy resolution. Mr. Polis.
Thank you. When the committee no doubt approves the open rule, I look forward to introducing on the House floor an amendment that would eliminate the subsidies for communities with $500 or less per passenger to further reduce the size of the program and save taxpayer money, and I look forward to doing that under the open rule, and I ask for support.
I appreciate your optimism. Any further discussion on the Slaughter amendment? If not, the vote occurs on the Slaughter amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair. The noes have it. The noes have it. The motion is not agreed to. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions. No. Mr. Sessions, no. Ms. Fox. No. Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Woodall. No. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Nugent. No. Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Scott. No. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster, no. Ms. Slaughter.
Aye.
Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings.
Aye.
Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis.
Aye.
Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No. And the clerk will
Chairman,
report
no.
total.
4 yeas, 8 nays.
And the motion is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? If not, the vote occurs on the motion of the gentleman from Dallas. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair.
No.
The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. And Mr. Webster will be managing for the majority.
Roll call, please.
I announced the manager. We still want a roll call. If without objection.
Yeah, we're not
if
one
there's-
cause.
If there, no, well, if there's no objection, if the gentlewoman would like a roll call vote, clerk call the roll.
Thank you.
Mr. Sessions.
Aye.
Mr. Sessions, aye. Ms. Fox? Ms. Fox, aye. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop, aye. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Woodall, aye. Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent, aye. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster, aye. Ms. Slaughter?
No.
Ms. Slaughter, no. Mr. McGovern? No. Mr. McGovern, no. Mr. Hastings?
No.
Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis?
No.
Mr. Polis, no. Mr. Chairman?
Aye. Clerk reports total.
8 yeas, 4 nays.
And Mr. Webster will still be managing for the majority on this rule.
Mr. Hastings for the
And Mr.
minority.
Hastings for the minority. We are still anticipating meetings on the interior or ledge branch. Both of those? Both of those coming up this week. And so, as I said, we'll expect a meeting tomorrow. And do we have a time set for that? 3 o'clock. So we'll look forward to seeing all of you at 3 o'clock tomorrow. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.